I'll just go across to him, but let me quickly introduce our other guest, Haras Rafiq, former advisor to the UK government. He has some very stern views on the BBC, and he's going to tell us a few things about how they work. Sanju Verma, Aarti Tikku, Tushar Gupta, Sanjay Jha, Ashutosh Ji, Vivek Bansal, none of these individuals require introduction, but let's go across to another individual who has sparked really the outrage in India, so to speak, against the BBC. Let's go straight across to him. Well, viewers, here we are with Mahesh Jethmalani, the Bharatiya Janata Party MP, Rajya Sabha, and someone who, of course, has targeted the BBC earlier. Now, Mr. Jethmalani, a couple of questions. Ordinarily, business such as this, that is being conducted for years altogether, would have been monitored by the IT department for a significant amount of time. Now, many people are saying that the timing here is a bit suspect, that given the fact that it has come right on the back of this BBC series, it appears that this is a knee-jerk reaction. Someone has unleashed the Rottweilers. How do you answer to this charge?
Well, I mean, you know, that's a bit of a wild statement. I don't know if it's backed up with any evidence. It's true that it's come post the BBC documentary, but the prelude to that BBC documentary and the aftermath as well was that sufficient a large amount of funding which the BBC was receiving, and it's been receiving it because it was desperate for money. It had gone almost broke, and it received a lot of funding overseas through an overseas organization called Storyworks, an entity controlled by it, from the Chinese state-owned companies such as Huawei and a host of others. Not only that, if you recall in the past, it's also out in the public domain that the employees' pension funds of BBC, almost 150 million pounds, if not more, but at least 150 million pounds, had been invested in Huawei and other Chinese state-owned companies. So there was, this basically was put a cloud over the BBC's motivations behind releasing of that documentary, particularly since the BBC documentary had ignored the fact, it was arrogant enough to attribute itself as the repository of truth when the Supreme Court had made a searching inquiry, right? And before that, an SIT investigation team had scrutinized the entire evidence relating to the Gujarat riots, and particularly the role of Prime Minister or then Chief Minister Modi in the matter, and had given him a clean chit. So if anybody is suspect in this, it's the BBC. And because of the overseas Chinese funding and Chinese investments by the BBC of pension funds in Chinese state-owned entities, obviously the BBC has come under financial scrutiny. That how are its activities in India being funded? All right. Now I don't know what the basis is. I mean, I have no idea as to why IT has opened up what they call a survey. They've initiated a survey. Right?
Okay, but typically,
which is a pretty comprehensive search into BBC's activities here, right?
Okay, yes. But typically, this is more on transfer pricing and tax evasion across jurisdictions, geographies. Now, clearly,
yes,
this would have been monitored for a significant amount of time, as I said. And now suddenly, after you make these allegations, and then, of course, the series debuts in Britain and is blocked here in India, you have action. Now, I'll just jog your memory back to when Tehelka was raided by agencies after its expose on Bangaru Lakshman in Operation West End. Outlook was raided by agencies after its stories on Ranjan Bhattacharya. This all happened, of course, in NDA 1 or the Vajpayee NDA. Dainik Bhaskar was recently raided a couple of years ago because it did some critical stories against the government during the COVID times. And we also have seen the UPA doing so. So at every stage, the courts, however, have come out and either ruled in favor of those that have been raided or surveyed, including the BBC. So why should we assume that this is not yet another fishing expedition?
nobody would ask anybody to assume that, right? But I don't know. I don't know what IT's official. I'm told they've come out with a statement as to what an official statement as to what the scope of their survey is. But irrespective of that, right? Why jump to conclusions about IT motivations? I mean, wait and see what IT comes up with. If this is just an empty raid or an empty survey, right, without any basis, and it throws up nothing, then of course you can, scream murder against the IT department. But at the moment, we have to presume the constitutionality and legality of departmental actions.
So you're saying that the opposition,
and there is no doubt that there is Chinese. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but are you suggesting then that the opposition's alacrity is in some ways a knee-jerk, reflexive hate for Mr. Modi, translating into support for the BBC, and they never applied these yardsticks to themselves when they were investigating the BBC? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would put it a little more mildly. The opposition has a visceral dislike for Prime Minister Modi, right? And it is quite likely that is one of the main reasons that motivated them to make this wild allegation against the IT department. If not a wild allegation, at least an unjustified allegation, a premature allegation at this stage.
Okay, well, let's open this up further. Thank you, Mr. Jethmalani, for joining us. You've set the contours for this conversation that is going to follow tonight. Thank you very much. Well, viewers, that was Mr. Jethmalani. Let's open this up. As I